And now,
it's 10 a.m.
Let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. No Jake Scott again today. He'll be back with us beginning next Monday. Very happy Tuesday to everybody out there. Loaded show today regardless. Mike Smith's going to join us coming up momentarily. Talking some Utah Jazz basketball, back in action tonight against the Boston Celtics before a long 4-game road trip. Come back home for 2 games and go back on the road for 5. So I think we have a pretty good sense over these next, 5, 6, 7, 12 games of what the Jazz are going to look like by mid-January. 9 road games, 3 home games. And some tough opponents mixed in there, including tonight against the Boston Celtics, who the Jazz have already beaten once this season on the road on a Yusuf Nurkic near buzzer beater. We'll see if the Jazz sweep the Celtics. Keontae George listed as questionable due to an illness. Steve Bartle's going to join us coming up at 11. I thought Steve had a good article on the value of Morgan Scalley and the role he's going to play as the head coach at Utah, how it's different than Kyle Whittingham, and why that's a good thing for the Utes. We'll talk about that, certainly, what he expects from the transfer portal, what he expects from the coaching hires. John Henry Daly this morning threw his name into the transfer portal. Maybe a surprise to some, including myself, that he will be available by spring. That's certainly a good sign wherever he's going. I thought it would be a longer injury than that, so good for John Henry Daly, but bad for the University of Utah. I would imagine Michigan would be very highly ranked in his transfer portal destinations. And then Cole Bagley will join us as the Utah Mammoths suffer a bad loss last night at home to the Nashville Predators, giving up a couple of goals despite having a late lead. What's going on with the Utah Mammoth? Feeling like they're playing very well, despite the fact that the team has not. So we'll talk to Cole about that, what he sees as the issues with the team since we last spoke to him. So very excited on a very busy show today with the Jazz in action tonight against the Boston Celtics. Boston has been maybe one of the bigger surprise teams in the NBA this year, and they have certainly kept it afloat with the Jazz, despite the fact that they have not had Jason Tatum so far this season. He's been out with the Achilles injury, and they hope to get him back. And some people thought maybe this would be a gap year for the Celtics where they would try and focus on getting a good draft pick, maybe semi-blow up their roster, trade a Derek White, let Jaylen Brown sit for long stretches, get a high draft pick, and then come back with their second idea of a championship team. But that is not the plan. They have been competing very well in the Eastern Conference and look to be making a good push towards the playoffs and hope to add Jason Tatum later in the year. Let's welcome in our next guest. He is a Utah Jazz analyst on the pre-half and post-game shows. Also, you can hear him throughout the broadcast. It is Mike Smith. What's going on, Mike?
Hi, Ben. How are you?
I'm doing terrific. Mike, this is a game the Jazz have already beat the Celtics once this year. I don't think anyone before the season maybe penciled in the Jazz going for a sweep, but I think that's very much on the table tonight.
The way they're playing offensively, the way they're playing the last couple of games, they would have some momentum. So, yeah, I would say it's possible for sure. It's going to be electric. I tried to get a little extra tickets tonight. None of those in sight, which is a good thing, I guess. So it'll be fun.
I was surprised the Jazz beat the Detroit Pistons and San Antonio Spurs on back-to-back nights. I think everybody was. But again, the story has been that Keontae George, even since we last talked, Mike, is better than he was when we last spoke. Over his last 8 games, he's averaging 30 points, something like 7 assists, 4 rebounds, 5 rebounds, 49% from the floor, 40% from 3, 90% from the free throw line. The stat out there is that the only other 2 players in NBA history who have done that over an 8-game stretch are Michael Jordan and Luka Doncic, who are pretty good players.
Wow.
Are we recognizing that not only has Keontae taken a step, beyond where he was last season, but he really is playing some of the best basketball of anybody in the NBA?
He really is. And I think those of us who are close to the Jazz program, and I'm speaking like you and I and those who watch, the fans who attend, sometimes you are tainted a little bit by what you've seen before. And I don't think we should be. And I only mean that we watched this kid enter the NBA at 19. We watched him try and play point guard for the first time in his life. We watched him not be able to finish at the rim with great consistency. We watched him in year 2, let's say not shoot it that well, right? Because 39% and 33% from 2 and 3 would not qualify as good. But now we watch, and so like in the back of your mind a little bit is, oh, will he revert back to like what we saw before? And I think that's an injustice to him, and I think it's an injustice to, I don't know, like players in general. Take a Cade Cunningham, for example, who I don't get to watch a lot, right? First pick 4 years ago. I think he's in his fifth year, and now he's a stud. And he's leading Detroit to, unprecedented heights with this roster. And it's not like they have the best roster in the league. They're good at the rim with Jalen Duren, and, they block some shots. But he's a stud. I don't get to see him that often. And, Ben, I don't watch the Pistons. That's nothing against the Pistons, but I'm not on a random non-Jazz night turning on the Pistons and saying, oh, let me watch this. But I do get to see him twice a year when he plays the Jazz. And so the progress happens the same way Keontae's growth is happening, yet I don't see every little nook and cranny and pitfall along the way that taints or, hinders the way I might think about that player. All of a sudden I just say, wow, Cade Cunningham in year 5 is a freaking stud. And I think that's the way we should view Keontae. It's kind of like, okay, like what he's doing is remarkable, but it's only going to get better from here. Does that point make sense?
Yeah, I think that's what's a little bit, impressive and exciting if you're a Jazz fan, and a little bit scary if you're the rest of the NBA, is that this is probably only the beginning of Keontae George's ascent. I don't know if we're seeing him top out. His usage isn't through the roof. He still doesn't look for his shot a ton. He does certainly is looking for his shot less than he did before. Now, he's shooting more, but it's coming within the flow of the offense, so I don't feel like he's trying to take over games the way he did for long stretches. And I think actually that pendulum will probably swing back a little bit when he realizes, oh, it's actually probably better if I do dial my own number 3 or 4 more times a game, especially if I'm going to continue to shoot 45% from the floor and 37% from 3.
Yeah, so well said. Like I try and say it on our show that the increased numbers is just not a result of increased volume. Like, yeah, he's taking 19 or 20 shots a game, but you're so spot on when you say they're coming within the flow of the offense. And what he's become really good at is getting fouled. And a lot of great scorers in the history of their careers became frequent foul shooters. They got to the line when it mattered most. That is the number one most important trait that Michael Jordan possessed, other than his killer instinct, is that he knew how to get fouled at the end of games. The 97 and 98 Jazz series can illustrate that better than ever. Like, it wasn't that he made every shot down the stretch, it's that he kept putting pressure on and got fouled. And yeah, it's not beautiful basketball when you shoot a lot of free throws. But how about the Jazz of late, Ben? I think over the last 14 games, where they are 7-7, and 4 of those games Lowry didn't play. So they're a 500 team over those 14 games. They are number 2 in the league in scoring, number 2 in the league in total assists, number 4 in the league in three-point percentage, number 7 in the league in threes made, number 1 in free throws attempted, number 1 in free throws made, number 1 in assist percentage. In other words, the number of baskets that are assisted upon. And if you break that down even a little further, number 1 in the league in two-point buckets that are assisted upon. Far and away the best team in the league in that category, not just the last 14 games, but for the entire season. If this team ever learns to defend, drafts a defender, trades for a defender, starts to get better on that end of the floor, they are a perennial annual playoff team. My opinion, right now, they're that good offensively against some of the better teams in the league.
I agree. I think you're probably 2 or 3 Royce O'Neal type players away, which you can get in free agency from being a team that has pretty firmly planted itself in the top 6 in the West, which means you're guaranteed a playoff spot. You're not in the play-in tournament.
Yep, totally agree. And Royce has his flaws, right? There's no perfect players out there. They're just everybody's going to come with a few warts. Royce became a good three-point shooter. He always was a decent defender because that was his calling card to make the league. So it's important to him. And look at Phoenix. They keep winning. They keep winning. I don't know what their record is now. You might have it in front of you. I'm not in front of a screen, but they're either 18-13 or something like that. And I'm like, how are they winning? They're winning with Devin Booker and a bunch of nobodies. Gillespie at the point guard and, Dylan Brooks causing havoc and Royce defending. And so you're so right. You get a couple of those guys whose DNA is to defend. And, things change super quickly.
I got an interesting question. I do a mailbag on Mondays in my podcast, and a listener asked, do the Jazz need to pick between Isaiah Collier or Walt Clayton going forward as the backup point guard, or is there a world where those two and Keontae George can all exist in the backcourt, specifically because they're a little undersized to play the one and the two, though Keontae does it some?
It's a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer. Not sure that it needs to be solved immediately, but like in an ideal world, probably. And I guess it depends what you get on the other end for one of those. But in the meantime, you're watching the progress. Walt seems like, Walt's coming off his best game, right? Like against San Antonio, he was so poised, so cool, made every shot he took, put pressure on the defense. I just thought he was amazing in that game. And I don't know why that happened, but part of me as I was watching that game was thinking, okay, like Ace's teammate Dylan Harper was taken with the second pick in the draft, and, I was taken much later, yet I won a national championship. But to me, it almost felt like I'm going to show Dylan Harper who the best young point guard is that was just drafted. But he didn't force anything. And then, of course, Isaiah just is so big and so strong and so fast with the ball that you almost want to wait and see what becomes of his finishing around the rim. His three-point shot, his outside shooting is better. It's still not a go-to. It's still not something he believes in 100% because he passes up a lot of open shots. And from having played in the league, you can never let your opponents think you're questioning your own ability there. You got to take those open shots when you get them. I know he worked religiously on it over the summer. But if I'm Isaiah Collier and I'm his age, the thing I'm working on most are every little shot inside 6 feet. Ben, every right-hand hook layup, every floater, every spin with either hand, every reverse layup. I try and become Steph Curry, Kyrie Irving, two of the greatest layup makers we've ever seen, with an array of shots around the rim, because he can get to the rim at will. And if he just becomes, half of those guys, or just better than he is now at the rim, watch out. He presents a different skill set than Keontae that's worth having, right? It's game-changing, his skill set, the pace, the pressure. Anyway, that's just not me speaking as a Jazz announcer. That's just kind of me as a basketball fan watching and, admiring talent and at the same time suggesting ideas like, oh, you're close to being unbelievable. This is what you need to do.
There is definitely something there with Isaiah. He shoots 37% from three. He only takes one a game, but all he needs to do is make sure you have to guard him closely, because if you guard him closely, then his speed is pretty difficult to stop. And as you mentioned, he's not little and quick. He's huge and quick. I don't know if people realize the jet engine he's got behind him that's propelling him forward. He is all muscle.
Yeah, no question.
So looking at the rest of this Jazz roster, do you think there's going to be interest in Jusuf Nurkic and Kevin Love around the trade deadline? I know Nurkic makes $19 million, and in today's day and age, it's really hard to trade that. But he's been shockingly good, I think, for the Jazz, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And Kevin Love certainly has more in the tank than I expected.
I think you're right on both ends. I don't know about the trade. deadline. I don't know what value there is out there. I don't know. Nurkic has been surprisingly good in the place of Kessler. Bigger than I thought, tougher than I thought. He's just, this will sound terrible, he's just a little careless. And I say that in the nicest way. It's almost like he can get these little shots around the rim, and I think he gets bored with them. Like, I don't know this, but he just strikes me as the guy who just probably leaves something out at his home. Like, he doesn't put it away, right? He just strikes me as this fun-loving, big hunk of a guy who can get every rebound, take up space, and he happens to be so gifted with his hands. I feel like for a guy who picked up the game late, the game came easy to him in terms of touch and feel. Like, he sees passes. He sees little floaters and little flips. Speaking of Boston, right, it's his little putback that wins the game against Boston at Boston earlier in the season. But he misses some of those, and he misses more than he should. And so I chuckle when he misses one, because Elem and I will be sitting there and we'll giggle, and I'll say, yeah, he just got bored with that one. Like, it was too easy for him. And that's sometimes how I feel. Like, the game feels like it comes so easy to him that he doesn't pay the most attention until the final second, like until the ball's done or the pass is completed. But he's an asset for sure, and he's a perfect fit in Will Hardy's, high post rub handoff offense because of the space he creates and the passes he can generate. Kevin Love's just a winner. He just doesn't have a ton left physically. He's got no more lift, which it just happens to the best of us at 18 years and 37, but he can shoot and he thinks the game. He's been so stinking supportive every time he doesn't play. He's the first one up when someone scores. There's really a lot to like about this team and a lot to like about those guys.
Those guys both space the floor. They do it in slightly different ways. Nurkic is only shooting 30% from three, and he only takes 1.5 a game. But like you said, he's always out on the perimeter with the dribble handoffs, and he can pick apart a defense from there. And Kevin Love's basically a spot-up shooter at this point. Do you think the Jazz have liked what they've gotten from having a 5 that can be out on the perimeter? And do you think that's been a reason why Lowry and Keontae are having career years? And does that influence what you think they want that 5 position to do going forward?
Well, it's a great question. I like your insights. Yeah, I mean, it most certainly could be related to the space given to Lowry and to Key. I wouldn't have come up with that myself. I wouldn't have thought, because they have a perimeter 5, these guys are having a career years. I just think they're having career years because they worked their tails off this summer, and it's the next step. Lowry wanted to make amends for a year that was forgettable, and not because he didn't play well. It just was a weird year, and he wanted to erase all that, and he always comes back great after playing in the summer all summer long. He's in such good shape and in such good form, and man, he was so good against San Antonio, Ben. Like, I often call him the most unique 7-footer in the game. And people can correct me because they'll say, what about Victor in San Antonio? I'm like, yeah, I don't think about him that often. But because I think of Lowry as a small forward, like a small forward / big forward who can do anything and score in any way. And I just don't think there's been a 7-footer like that. I really don't. Like, he's way different than Dirk, who's a 7-footer who could also shoot, but he's just so much more than Dirk was, and not better per se. They're different. Lowry's more versatile, more unique, more of a skill set. But then I see Victor, and that people will say, he's the most unique 7-footer. Well, yeah, you're right. 7'5", and he can shoot, and he changes the game. And there was a great stat coming into the Jazz game that in the minutes Victor had played since he came back from injury, the Spurs were only giving up 88 points per 100 possessions, which was why they had won 8 or 9 in a row, other than the Cup final game. But the Jazz neutralized it. And I thought they were going to play Flip or Love or Nurk or even Lowry at the 5 to neutralize Wemby in the game. And as it was Nurk who kind of dragged him away and made a couple threes early and forced there to be some openings. So Nurk played great in that game. But I thought Lowry in that game head-to-head against Wemby was the best 7-footer on the floor. He was that good, that tough, that crucial, that clutch. He's really good. If he doesn't make an all-star team this year, it's a travesty.
I think you brought it up last time we talked, and I think you're dead on, is that he's just so good when he moves, and there are not a lot of 7-footers whose entire game is based off of running every second they're on the floor, especially on the offensive side. That's hard because who do you guard him with? You know, he comes off a curl. He doesn't care if anybody's in front of him because he's probably bigger than you are. And if you're too small, he has shown a willingness to get to the rim.
No, and I think teams have tried to guard him with smaller players, which is one reason why the Jazz last year, let's just say, experimented with putting Lowry with a lot of guard or small forward, big forward swaps, pick and rolls, and then tried to give the ball to Lowry at the elbow. It was like a whole scheme. Let's get Lowry the ball there on a smaller defender and just have him shoot over him. He's okay at that, which we saw last year, not great at that. And he doesn't post up often. He can shoot over people, but he just doesn't gravitate towards that, which is very interesting. So it's to your point and to what I said earlier, it is all about movement for him. And it still makes him tough to guard. If you guard him with length, he's running past him in circles around guys. If you guard him with smaller, his mobility plus strength on the move makes him really difficult to stop.
Mike, I mean, we're 35 games into the season, something like that already, and I feel like I've barely seen you at the Jazz games. What's new with Mike?
Oh, gosh, we're getting through Christmas, right? You know, I have 10 children. That's fun. We had half of those here. It was a blast. I cannot believe the weather we've been having. I did play golf twice last week and twice the week before. Unheard of. This time of year, if you'd told me, Ben, 4 years ago when I moved to Utah, I'd have been playing golf mid or late December. So that was kind of fun. And I think I love my wife more than ever. And that's saying something after all these years. So that's kind of cool. Oh, I'll tell you what, something cool in my life. I've become an ambassador in the state of Utah for General Motors, which is just like one of the coolest things. So GM has like 7 dealerships in the state, and I'm getting to know all those dealerships, all those people who run them, and they are just first and foremost fantastic people. Brian Johnson up at like GMC Riverdale, it's a Ken Garff dealership, is a fantastic guy. Miles Penrose owns the national GMC at American Fork. He's got a guy named Justin Curtis runs that shop. They're just the greatest people. And so, I don't know if you know this about me, Ben. I love people. I love being out in the community. I love getting to know people and finding out what makes them tick or what they're good at or what they're successful at. Oftentimes I'll ask someone, tell me your talents, tell me your strengths, tell me what you're good at. And then I love learning about people. So that's kind of a fun new development. It'll keep me moving around the state when I'm not doing Jazz stuff and doing events and probably speaking to their sales teams and posting different things. But I try and stay busy. I'm looking forward to a fantastic 2026. That's about it, brother. I'm still jealous of your long locks. And I got to keep my hair short so I can look presentable on TV. And that's it. I think you're a fantastic writer.
Mike, I appreciate you. You've got better hair than I do. There's no doubt about that, but I appreciate the nice words.
You got it. See you tonight.
We'll talk to you soon, Mike. There he is. Mike Smith giving us a breakdown on the Utah Jazz. When we come back, the top 3 stories at KSLSports.com. Stick around. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.